Johann. Look at her. Look at that child's eyes. Tell me you don't see yourself.
You don't get to look away this time, Johann. She's asked me for 4 years who her father is.
Mommy said my daddy was the bravest man in the world. Is that you? Are you my daddy?
4 years of silence broke in 11 words. The ballroom of the Kim Grand Hotel had seen mergers signed and rivals humbled, but it had never seen Johann Kim's hand shake. Every camera in the room caught it, the most feared name in the city, frozen in front of a 4-year-old girl with his own eyes staring back at her from a hotel mirror 20 feet away. Diane Sterling had promised herself she would never come back to this family, this life, this man. She had built a bakery, a name, a home just far enough from the Kim empire to breathe. But when the invitation arrived, addressed not to her, but to Hannah, guest of honor, Kim Family Foundation Gala, she understood someone already knew the truth she'd buried. Someone wanted it exposed tonight. Somebody in this room had engineered her humiliation once before. She would not let them use her daughter to do it again. Johann had spent 4 years believing the woman he loved sold his family's secrets to a rival family. 4 years building a wall so total that even his grandmother stopped asking about the wedding ring he still wore on a chain beneath his shirt. Now a little girl's question hung in the air like a verdict, and 40 guests, 3 watching rival families, and 1 hidden traitor were about to find out how he'd answer it. Before we continue, if the person you loved publicly denied you to protect you, without ever explaining why, would that still count as betrayal? Tell us honestly in the comments. The Kim Family Foundation Gala had exactly one rule Johann had never broken: no surprises. Every guest list vetted. Every camera positioned. Every toast written 3 days in advance. He built his life this way because a man who controlled every variable could not be ambushed by grief. He hadn't accounted for a 4-year-old girl in a borrowed navy dress, standing in the doorway of his ballroom holding her mother's hand. Conversation didn't stop all at once. It died in patches, table by table, as 300 guests followed Grandmother Kim's gaze to the entrance. By the time the string quartet noticed and stumbled through a wrong note, the entire room had gone still enough to hear Diane Sterling's heels against the marble. 4 years. He'd rehearsed this moment more times than he'd admit, in board meetings, at 3 a.m., in the silence after every event he was expected to attend and never quite did. In none of those rehearsals had she brought a child who tilted her head exactly the way his mother used to. Johann. Grandmother Kim's voice cracked like a whip disguised as a whisper. Look at her. Look at that child's eyes. Tell me you don't see yourself. He didn't move. Couldn't. Daniel Cho appeared at his elbow with a champagne flute and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Smooth it over, cousin, get her out, this is a disaster, but Johann barely registered him. Diane crossed the floor first. She always had been braver than him about the things that mattered. I didn't come here to ruin your night, she said, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear, quiet enough to still sound like it was only for him. I came because someone sent Hannah an invitation with your family crest on it. Someone who already knows what you're about to find out. Her chin lifted the way it used to right before she told him something he didn't want to hear. So don't stand there deciding how to spin this for the room, Johann. Decide whether you want to know your daughter. The word landed on him like a struck bell. Hannah, oblivious to the small earthquake she'd caused, studied him with the frank curiosity only children have left. Mommy said my daddy was the bravest man in the world, she said, in the too loud voice of someone who hadn't yet learned rooms could be silent on purpose. Is that you? Are you my daddy? Somewhere behind him, a camera shutter clicked. Then another. He would see this exact frame on gossip sites by morning. Johann Kim, frozen, hand halfway lifted toward a little girl's face, unable to finish the gesture or take it back. He looked at Diane instead of the cameras, because some habits from loving her had never actually died. Who sent the invitation? He asked quietly. Not is she mine, not why didn't you tell me, but the question of a man who'd spent 4 years learning that the people closest to him lied best. Diane's eyes flickered, just once, toward Daniel Cho. That, she said, is what I came here to find out. Behind his practiced smile, Daniel Cho's knuckles went white around his champagne glass. Diane's bakery smelled like cardamom and burnt sugar when Johann knocked at the back door instead of the front, at the hour she'd told him and not a minute before. No security detail. No car idling out front. Just him, in a plain dark coat, looking like a man who'd forgotten how to enter a room without an entourage to announce him. "You came alone," she said, not quite a question. "You said alone or not at all." She let him in. Hannah was upstairs with a neighbor, which left the two of them alone with 4 years of silence and a scarred wooden table between them. Diane set down a photograph, the one that had ended her marriage in front of 300 witnesses and a dozen cameras. "You want to know what this actually is," she said, "before you decide again what I deserve." Johan's jaw tightened yet again, but he didn't argue the word. "Tell me." "That's Mina Osei. She wasn't feeding me shipping routes, Johan, she was begging me to help her disappear from her own family before they married her off to settle a debt. I ran a Tuesday program for women trying to get out of exactly that kind of arrangement. She found me through a friend of a friend. I met her twice. Both times, somebody was watching who wasn't supposed to be. The report said. I know what the report said. I lived what the report cost me." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I tried to tell your father. He looked at me like I was already a stranger." Johan was quiet a long moment. When he spoke, it came out rawer than she'd heard from him in years. "The council gave me 48 hours. Renounce you publicly, or the whole alliance would be called compromised, and there were men in that room who wanted the problem solved permanently, not politely. I told myself if the world believed I'd cast you out completely, no one would waste a bullet on a woman I'd already thrown away. You decided that. For both of us. Without 5 minutes to ask if I had an explanation. I was trying to keep you alive. You let me spend 4 years hating you instead of trusting me for 5 minutes, Johan." The words landed exactly where she meant them to. That's not protection. That's just control with a kinder story attached. He had no answer for that, because she wasn't wrong. It was Hannah who broke the silence, thundering down the stairs in socked feet with a drawing clutched in both hands. "Mommy, look, I drew our family." She stopped short at the sight of Johan, then held the paper up anyway, unbothered. 3 stick figures. A fourth, smaller and separate, off to the side. "That's the sad man from your picture box," she said matter-of-factly, pointing at the 4th figure. "I gave him a smile so he wouldn't be sad anymore." Johan didn't trust himself to speak. He simply reached out and took the drawing like it was the only document that had ever mattered. The drawing stayed on Johan's desk for 3 days before he did anything about it. On the 4th, he requested something he hadn't touched in 4 years, the full security archive from the week everything ended. Diane, for her part, pulled a shoebox down from her closet, a small spiral notebook, water-stained at one corner, that she hadn't opened since the week she left the city. She'd started it out of habit, dates, names, a nagging feeling she couldn't prove. She'd tried to tell someone who mattered, once, and been dismissed so completely she'd stopped trying and started surviving instead. She brought it to their second meeting, at a park 2 blocks from the bakery, Hannah chasing pigeons within sight of the bench. "I wrote down what time I actually left that meeting with Mina," Diane said, sliding the notebook across. "It doesn't match your file's timeline. Somebody adjusted the record by almost 40 minutes. Johan, read it twice. This isn't proof of anything on its own. No. But it's a thread. Pull it. If I formally reopen an investigation from 4 years ago, I reopen a wound our rivals think is closed. The peace we've kept since then was built on the story that you were the leak and the matter was handled. Pulling this thread doesn't just cost me. It could cost every family that depends on that peace holding." Diane watched Hannah laugh at a pigeon that refused to fly away, and something in her hardened. "You don't get to protect your peace with my name attached to it anymore, Johan. You pick. Either the truth matters more than the story you've all agreed to live with, or it doesn't, and I'll know exactly where I stand." He didn't answer right away, and she respected him more for not pretending it was simple. What neither of them saw was Daniel Cho, 2 days later, requesting routine access to the same archive from the family's elderly record keeper, Mr. Han, smiling the whole time, offering to save him the trouble of pulling the physical logs himself. Mr. Han, flattered, agreed. By the time Johan's assistant went looking for the original intake sheet from that week, it had somehow already been misfiled. Johan noticed the gap immediately. For years of running an empire had taught him exactly what a missing document usually meant. He didn't say anything to the council. He didn't say anything to Daniel. He simply started watching his cousin the way he used to watch rivals. That night, he called Diane. I want to see everything you have. Not pieces. All of it. A long pause. Then, come Thursday. I'll show you all of it. Thursday, Diane laid it all out on the same scarred table, the notebook, photographs Mina had sent her afterward from safety, and a folded lease renewal notice Diane had almost thrown away a dozen times. What's that one? Johan asked. My landlord tried to triple my rent 2 years ago, after a write-up connected my bakery to the Kim scandal. Then, out of nowhere, the increase disappeared and my lease got extended 5 years at the original rate. I always assumed a customer with money felt sorry for me. Johan said nothing, which was its own answer. It was you, she said slowly. The whole time. I couldn't fix what I did. I could at least make sure you never lost the one thing you built without my family's name attached to it. He reached beneath his collar and pulled out a thin chain she hadn't noticed, his wedding ring hanging from it, worn smooth. I told the council I stopped wearing it. I lied about that too, apparently. I'm told I've become very good at protecting people by lying to them. It wasn't quite an apology. It was closer to the truth than anything he'd said in 4 years, and Diane felt something in her chest crack open despite every wall she'd rebuilt. Later, flour-dusted and laughing despite herself, she let him into the kitchen when Hannah demanded the sad man help decorate cupcakes. Johan Kim, who had once rearranged a shipping route to avoid a 5-minute delay, who sat through board meetings without blinking while men twice his age tried to rattle him, stood in a cramped bakery kitchen in a borrowed apron, badly piping frosting while his daughter critiqued his technique with the withering honesty only a 4-year-old possesses. You're bad at this, Hannah informed him. I'm told I'm good at very few things that matter, he said, and heard how true it sounded. Diane, watching from the doorway, allowed herself one unguarded moment, the ghost of the man she'd fallen in love with, still visible underneath the version the world had made of him. When their hands met reaching for the same piping bag, neither pulled away as fast as either expected to. Johan's phone buzzed against the counter. Then again. Then a third time, insistent in the way only real trouble ever was. The council knows I've been coming here, he said, expression changing. Multiple times. They want to see me tonight. Diane stepped back first, some old instinct returning fast. Then you should go. Diane. Go, Johan. Before they decide I'm a problem to be handled again instead of a person to be asked. The council met in the same room where Johan's denial had first been drafted 4 years earlier, mahogany table, 6 senior members, and his uncle Junho, who never used 2 words where a threat would do in one. You've been seen at her bakery 4 times this month, Junho said. You've requested the archive from 4 years ago. Our rivals are asking questions we can't answer without reopening a matter this family agreed was closed. It was never closed, Johan said. It was buried. Careful. I am done being careful with the truth, uncle. Daniel Cho, seated near the end of the table, offered a concerned frown that didn't reach his eyes. Johan, we understand this is emotional. A child changes things. But dragging Diane's name through an investigation could hurt her far more than it helps. The press will crucify her all over again, and there's a little girl who'll read about it one day. It was, Johan would later realize, a masterful move, wrapping a threat in the language of protecting the very people he intended to destroy. The council's decision came fast and cold. Any formal reopening would result in the family withdrawing its charitable partnership with the community program that helped fund Diane's neighborhood. 3 other small businesses would lose support alongside hers. Johan told her that night, expecting her to retreat. Instead he found her already braced for it. This is exactly why I left, she said quietly, Hannah asleep upstairs. It's never just us, Johan. It's your whole world, deciding what my life is allowed to cost. I know. Then what are you going to do about it? He'd spent 4 years being a man who managed problems quietly, who protected people by deciding things for them and calling it love. He thought of Hannah's drawing, the sad man given a smile he hadn't earned yet. 2 days later, without asking the council's permission, Johan filed formal legal paperwork acknowledging Hannah Kim as his daughter, public record, no quiet arrangement. He attended the community fundraiser in person, cameras and all, standing beside Diane instead of sending a check from a distance the way the old Johan would have. The cost came fast. A council elder withdrew backing for an upcoming merger, a rival family reopened an old trade dispute, Junho stopped taking his calls. Daniel Cho, watching his careful architecture fail to move Johan an inch, made his first real mistake. He arranged to run into Diane alone outside the bakery and suggested, gently, that she consider how much easier everyone's life would be if she quietly stepped back before things got complicated for her daughter. Diane smiled at him with the calm of a woman who'd already survived the worst thing his family could do to her. "Funny," she said. "That's almost exactly what the doctored photo of me and Mina was supposed to accomplish too. You should be more careful, Daniel. You're starting to repeat yourself." His smile didn't move. But something behind his eyes did. Grandmother Kim requested no one but family in the sitting room the following evening, which, pointedly, now included Diane and Hannah, seated on the good sofa Johan remembered being forbidden to touch as a child. "I did not sleep well for 4 years," Grandmother Kim said, without preamble, setting a thin folder on the table. "An old woman with insomnia has a great deal of time to make phone calls no one thinks to monitor." Inside were financial records, a hotel registry, and a photograph, not of Diane, but of Daniel Cho, meeting the same rival contact Diane had supposedly betrayed the family to, 3 days before Diane's photograph was taken, and continuing to meet him quietly, several times, in the 2 years since. He needed a story that would survive scrutiny, Grandmother Kim continued. A wife with motive was safer than a cousin with none. He altered the timestamp on the archive intake sheet himself. Mr. Han showed me which drawer he asked to help organize. Old men notice more than young men expect. Daniel Cho, summoned without explanation, went very still in the doorway. "Sit down, Daniel," Grandmother Kim said, not unkindly, which was somehow worse. "This is absurd," he began. "Grandmother, you're letting an outsider's grudge. I watched you eat dinner at my table for 30 years, she said. "I know exactly what your voice sounds like when you're lying. You've sounded like that since the moment she walked into the gala." Johan hadn't spoken yet. When he finally did, his voice was quieter than anyone expected, and far more dangerous for it. "For years, Daniel. For years I let you stand next to me at what I thought was the grave of my marriage. You knew the whole time, and you let me become this. I did what I had to do to survive in a family that would have replaced me the moment I showed weakness," Cho said, finally dropping the mask. "You think you're the only one who learned love is a liability here. I just learned it faster." Diane, silent through all of it, finally spoke, not to Cho, but to Johan. "Being right doesn't give me back 4 years. It doesn't give Hannah back a father who missed her first steps because he believed a lie instead of a person who'd never lied to him." Her voice caught, just once. "You still have to earn the rest. An apology isn't the finish line. It's the starting gun." "I know," he said, and for the first time, he sounded like he actually did. Hannah, sensing weight in the room without understanding its shape, climbed uninvited into Johan's lap and patted his cheek with businesslike 4-year-old confidence. "Don't be sad anymore," she instructed. "I already fixed your picture." Johan spent 4 years blaming the wrong person for a lie someone he trusted built. Be honest, could you forgive someone for believing a lie over you, even once you understood why? Daniel Cho did not wait to see what the council would decide. By the time security reached his office, half his files were gone and his assistant swore he'd left for a family emergency an hour earlier. He resurfaced that night with one last card, a message to Johan, not quite a threat. He had, over the years, quietly diverted funds through shell accounts linked to the community foundation supporting Diane's neighborhood. If the family pursued him through the police rather than handling it internally, he'd make sure the resulting audit swallowed the foundation whole. The old Johan would have paid quietly to make the threat disappear. Instead, he called a full council meeting and told them everything: the frame job, the years of smaller betrayals, the threat against the foundation, in front of every member who had once voted to force him to deny his own wife. "I could handle this the way this family has always handled its problems. Quietly. In a way that protects our name and lets a guilty man walk away richer than the woman he destroyed," he said. "Or we can do something this family has never done for me, or for her. We can choose the truth even when it costs us." It was Diane, invited into that room for the first time in 4 years, who delivered the final blow. She placed Grandmother Kim's folder, her own notebook, and a formal statement from Mina Osei, tracked down and willing to speak on the record, in front of the full council. "I spent 4 years being talked about in rooms I wasn't allowed into," she said. "I'm not interested in this being handled quietly, for anyone's comfort but mine. I want it handled correctly. That means the authorities, not a family vote. No one in the room argued with her. Not even Junho. Daniel Cho was found 2 days later, trying to board a flight under a name that wasn't his own. Between the council's evidence and Mina's statement, the authorities had more than enough to take it from there. Johan visited Diane the evening it was finally, fully over, and found her sitting on her own back steps instead of celebrating. "You don't look relieved," he said. "I am. I'm also tired of my whole life being decided in other people's rooms." She looked at him steadily. "So here's my choice, since apparently it's my turn to make one. If you want to be in Hannah's life, you're in it as her father, not an arrangement the council tolerates. If you want to be in mine, you're in it as my husband, not a man managing a mistake. All the way, or not at all. I'm done with almost." Johan sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched, and didn't reach for his phone once. "All the way," he said. "I should have said it the first time. I'm saying it now, in front of no cameras, no council, no one but you. All the way." The Kim Family Foundation Gala returned to the same ballroom 1 year later, and this time Johan made sure there were no surprises for anyone but himself. He'd spent months learning small, ordinary things the old Johan never had time for, that Hannah refused to eat toast cut in triangles, only rectangles, that she liked her hair in 2 braids, badly done by her father's hands most mornings because Diane let him try even when he made a mess of it, that a phone call could wait, almost always, if bedtime couldn't. When the string quartet began, Johan didn't stand at the head table. He stood at the entrance, exactly where Diane had stood a year before, and waited for his family to walk in. Hannah ran ahead in a dress that matched her mother's, ignoring every rule about walking slowly the event planner had drilled into her. Diane followed at her own pace, unhurried, because she'd learned 4 years ago what it cost to let a room's expectations dictate her steps, and had no intention of forgetting it. Johan crouched down before either of them reached him this time, no hesitation, no trembling hand stopped short. "Hi, Daddy," Hannah said, like it was the easiest thing in the world, because to her, by now, it was. He lifted her onto his shoulders in front of 300 guests, cameras included, and let every photograph capture exactly what it showed, a man who no longer needed to control the story, because for the first time, the story was simply true. He found Diane's hand and lifted it, unhurried, to his lips in front of the same council that once forced him to deny she existed. "This is my wife," he said, loud enough for the back row, for the gossip sites, for his uncle Junho, for anyone who had ever needed convincing. "This is my daughter. This has always been my family. I was only ever the one too afraid to say so." Grandmother Kim, seated at the head table with something that looked suspiciously like satisfaction, raised her glass first. Some men spend their lives building empires. Johan Kim had finally learned which one was worth keeping. 4 years ago, the world watched Johan Kim deny his wife in front of 100 cameras. Tonight, in that same ballroom, he lifted his daughter onto his shoulders, kissed his wife's hand in front of everyone who once condemned her, and finally said the only words that had ever mattered. Some legacies are built in boardrooms. The one that lasts is built at a kitchen table, badly braiding a little girl's hair. If you believe love can survive even the coldest denial, subscribe to Light Romance Stories for more. And tell us, would you have forgiven Johan as fast as Diane did, or made him work harder for it?